Hello, my name is Craig Fowler and welcome to the very first episode of a new series on the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. It is Rangers, the Banter Years. On the Terrace Patreon, we have a long-running series called Moments in Patter, where we like to look back through some of the daft, the funny and crazy stuff that's happened in Scottish football across our lifetimes with a nostalgic tint. Throughout the podcast, we've tended to mix things up a little bit, so we're not just focusing on one club too many times. But that made it difficult when it came to dropping in moments about Rangers, because between 2012 and the current year, there have been loads of things that have happened to Rangers which would qualify for moments in patter. So we thought this deserved its own spin-off series, Rangers, the Banter Years, which will be going on exclusively onto YouTube, but there will also be an audio podcast version available on our Patreon from our lowest tier, which is just £2 a month. It's going to be a mix of Terrace Patreon contributors on these episodes, but I thought for the first one, what better person to help introduce this series with me than with our very own Rangers resident Rangers fan, Euan Taylor. I guess both of them works.
Yes, both of them work. Hello, Craig. Delighted to be here, if that is the right phrase. Yes, I'm sure that this will be cathartic, if nothing else.
Yes, so yeah, well, I was just going to get to that. So we won't get to any of the moments on this episode. This is just an introduction to let everybody know what they are to expect from this series and to get the take of a Rangers fan, because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of hate from Rangers fans for doing this. But so I'll start by asking you, are you looking forward to this series at all?
Well, I suppose at this absolute precise moment in time, it's actually better to be talking about the past than the present as a Rangers fan. So yeah, it's a reminder when Rangers used to lose to lower league opposition, which obviously never happens anymore. Yeah, that would be. I mean, obviously, I mean now, and that, to be fair, at the time it was also very funny, even as a Rangers fan. Not all of it. Once the initial shock subsided, it became quite funny. It wasn't, obviously the actual football was terrible, so there was almost no enjoyment to be had of the actual games because they were either horrible or no contest. But and they were mainly horrible actually. But certainly all the off-field stuff was very funny. And yeah, I have lots of memories at the time of sort of being in weird grounds as a Rangers fan, and and all the nonsense that occurred off the pitch, and the sort of rotating cast of characters throughout all that, and the scrapes they got into. So yeah, no, it will be good. I'll have to dig out my list of. I think the first podcast I ever did for the Terrace was the list of signings from during this period, and then ranking them from worst to best, or maybe the other way around. And yeah, I'll need to dust that off to remind myself of some of the players that we actually had. It was obviously incredible period as a Rangers fan. And it's not, I mean, yeah, the cut-off period we had the chat about that yesterday. It's like, when did it stop? And
yeah, so we can get into that conversation now, because I think your argument was that the Banter Years period was very much just Rangers, not even just Rangers in the lower leagues, Rangers before Warburton, which only really covers 3 seasons and a bit, which isn't much. Yeah, because you got up to a lot of nonsense after that.
We did, but I feel, I mean, yeah, you can obviously argue, and maybe you could argue up till Gerrard, I would say, coming in, but I think certainly I felt that, I mean, it depended, because the season that the Rangers got promoted from the Championship, like, Rangers were good, well, were relatively good that season. I mean, still managed to sign off by losing to Hibs in the cup final, but apart from that, it was, they did beat Celtic, in the semi-final, and it was like, it was, apart from losing to Hibs, as I said, that's like, that relatively unembarrassing season where Rangers actually played like good football and made some like actually really good signings, and it was like that feels to me like, and it was also the ownership, again, you can argue did it was it great what happened when Dave Kim came in, but it was generally speaking, that was the end of the complete nonsense off the park. Now Rangers still, also ran up lots of losses and continue to do so, but it was a completely different situation than it was when when it was Charles Green and Mike Ashley and all that. So that's why I would make a distinction, because some of what happened afterwards was, I mean, most of it was due to the process of sort of getting back. But even like now, I would say that, I mean, Rangers are just in a sort of, I would say, a sort of normal bad Rangers situation. Like they're still, like, they're not as good as Celtic, but I mean, there were lots of seasons back in,
I was going to say a £17 million loss in 1 year, a normal Rangers situation, and I thought, well,
yes,
that's a normal situation.
We used to do this all the time. And so I'd say normal, it's like, Rangers are just a bit crap at the moment, but, have been, at least in the relative, recent past, have been quite good. But generally speaking, I mean, these are sort of things that, is basically it's just not a good Rangers team. That what happened, I would say, from 2012 to 2015, that was completely out of the ordinary. And that was, you basically, you had like an ownership that was either trying to just take money out of the club, or use Rangers for sort of nefarious means, basically, which is not the case now. So I think there's a distinction, and there's also, I mean, there are players. Obviously, Rangers don't have a particularly good Rangers team at the moment, but there's a difference with what was the case at the time. In that period, where there's some guys obviously should never been anywhere near the football club that were. So that would be that. That's why I would.
That's your argument. That's your argument,
yes,
right? Okay.
Yes.
So,
but then that does miss out things. It does miss out some things.
It does miss out some things. There is also an argument to be said that Rangers and Banter Years are still going on.
Yes.
That it never fully stopped.
Yes, you could say that. But I mean, in the meantime, Rangers have gone undefeated in the league and won the title and got to European Cup final and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say my original plan was to cut it at COVID. I might cut it at Gerrard, just depending on how many things we do, whether I think the series is going a bit stale, whatever, for whatever reason. But it's I'm flexing my muscles here. I'm in charge, and I don't like to do it very often, but I'm doing it now. I'm in charge, and it is definitely going to, at the very least, Gerrard coming in, because there is no danger that we are having this series without having Progress Nerocorn and Pedro Caixinha on the bush.
Yes, I did. I was thinking you would miss that. I would miss Graham Murphy doing a headstand, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There are some things that happened afterwards.
Martin Blackhorn getting called fat by a teenager. There's so much. So much stuff.
Like that. I can't remember that many funny things happened after. I mean, because it wouldn't just be like Rangers losing a game. That's not funny. That's not funny at all, as far as I'm concerned, actually. But no, like, unless it's like, fair enough, Queen's Park.
The League Cup final against Celtic, that was pretty funny. Obviously terrible if you're a Rangers fan, but I mean, Rangers absolutely battering Celtic. Celtic scoring an offside goal. Rangers getting a penalty. Alfredo Morelos, for some reason, demanded that he took it.
That was good. But again, these things happen. You lose a game. I remember it happened again this season. Like, Rangers cheated out of a League Cup final against Celtic. These things happen. But I think it's slightly, as I say, that I would make that distinction between like the proper nadir, like, and maybe when you obviously come on to like what was the lowest point, and like I would off the top of my head, like losing to Raith Rovers in the Scottish Cup, I think it was.
Oh yeah, in front of like about, I don't know, 50,000 at Ibrox,
because it was like a sort of boycott at the time, and. Yeah, I didn't have a season ticket. I stopped at get my season ticket that year, because that was one of the things to try and do to like starve the ownership at the time out. So I'd say that was, because at that point I was like, it was really hard to see how Rangers come back from this, and then actually relatively quickly, within the very next season, Rangers beat Celtic. So which seemed miles away at the time. So yeah, that was. That's why I would sort of, where I would make the distinction, but it's, I can't argue that lots of funny things happen subsequently. I continue to.
So I should say as well, before we're finishing this, that I know there's Rangers fans who listen to the Terrace are not going to be surprised by this. They might get a little bit annoyed at times, but they're generally aware of our tone and aware of how we see Scottish football. But for those of you who are not aware of the Terrace and how we like to talk about things, basically our favourite thing about Scottish football is the daft stuff and Schadenfreude. And we like taking pleasure in the misery of others. Now, Euan is a part of the Terrace, but he's one of 15 people. You're the only Rangers fan. There's one Celtic fan. Everybody else supports other teams. There is no, contrary to reputation, there is no clear fan base which rules over the rest. Most of us aren't Celtic fans, and most of us aren't Celtic fans and don't like Celtic. Most of us aren't Hibs fans and don't like Hibs. Most of us, believe it or not, aren't Hearts fans. There's 4 Hearts fans out of 14, and the rest, I would say the majority of the rest really don't like Hearts. So it's kind of an even balance there, even though there's more Hearts fans than anybody else. So,
okay, well, that's how you sleep at night, Craig. Then that's
it's always my dream coming up to build a Hearts media empire.
Yes.
So we just like to have a laugh at clubs, teams, players, individuals who make an arse of themselves. And nobody's made a greater arse of themselves on a grander scale than Rangers consistently since 2012.
Yes, unfortunately, that is the case. I'm afraid. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into we'll have probably like a 3-hour episode on the corporate law implications of the Newco situation and all that, which will in the tax case, and we'll cover all that. No, I'm hopefully not.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. Don't care about that. Too boring. If you want to, we're going to call them Rangers all the way through. If you are offended by that, grow the fuck up. Like, yes. I can happily make jokes about Rangers dying. Rangers died and the Hearts survived. But just call them Rangers. Who really gives a shit?
Yeah, the one thing that I find funny is that like people. You see it slightly less now. You still see it on a certain Celtic blogger's made up league tables that he does when he does like who's had the most that benefited from a pattern of assistance and all that. But people that call Rangers the Rangers, and it's like for that's like Rangers fans call Rangers the Rangers because it's like a distinction. It's like we are the Rangers, not a Rangers, of which there are some, and it was it was because of the name of the company, but the company was always called that. Like, the company always started the Rangers Football, so it's like, what are you on about? Like, it's like
I think it came from when the BBC, wasn't it? When the BBC first posted the League Two table, it had the Rangers in it, and I think people just kind of latched onto that initially and thought, oh, that must be the name of the new club, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre thing. It's almost like you got to find a better slander name than something which we Rangers fans say themselves as like a sort of almost like an honorific title. It's like, what are you on about?
Okay, Sevco more offensive then.
Yes, that's a hate crime. but the Rangers is fine. If we want to call us that, then that's fine. But yes.
Before we get out of here, just kind of talking about how Rangers fans would see this series. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of them saying, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people in the comments saying, I couldn't give a fuck who the hell are you guys. But for those who will get offended, it's just in general. Like, is it a case that, because I remember when Rangers were doing the journey back through the lower leagues, and then maybe not so much at that point, but I still remember it for then. But it was more kind of after with like Warburton and Caixinha and Murty. I felt there was a lot of like laughing at themselves from Rangers fans, and Rangers fans kind of had a sense of humour. And I remember thinking it was quite funny when Celtic had their one bad season. And I remember, like, because I used to be on Twitter all the time, and it was where you obviously shouldn't do this, but I was living in Edinburgh at the time. I don't know many Rangers or Celtic fans, and so you obviously get a lot of what you think about fans of other teams from social media. And at the time, I was like, "Oh, Rangers fans have got a sense of humour. Celtic fans do not." And then when Rangers won the title and Celtic were awful that season, it seemed to switch. Celtic fans suddenly had a sense of humour, Rangers fans didn't. But it seems like, and I don't know if it's just me because I'm on Twitter less these days, because and it's also generally an angry place in general.
Yeah.
Is it true that you would say that in, say, like 2017 or whatever, Rangers fans were more likely to laugh about the current shitness and situation of the team than they are now.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think there's probably a few reasons for that. I mean, I think it's been going on for a long time now. So it feels like with a brief break, it sort of feels like that's enough now. Come on. And there's also less of an excuse. I mean, I think, when it went, and there is, not the expectations ever really, cratered once, famously, first game back in the Premiership, and there was like the big banner, which I think I held up one of the cards saying like going for 55 or whatever it was. Like when we were playing Hamilton, we managed to draw Joey Barton's debut. But like,
oh, yeah, aye, sorry, that's the wrong one. If we're cutting it at like Warburton coming in, we don't get Joey Barton. Nah, come on, man.
Okay, fair enough. But that, so there was obviously an expectation the Rangers would almost immediately compete, but I think your reality kicked in fairly quickly that season, maybe on the first day, and then there was, while like for 90 minutes there was I wouldn't say there's much of a difference in this or anger. I think there was an acceptance deep down. There was an acceptance that, look, your Rangers have come from a lower league. It will take. Celtic have just had a free run at the title. They've had a free run at Champions League money and so on. Not that they made it very often, but they've had such an advantage. It's got such a head start. It's like, there are going to be growing pains here, and as the club it certainly wasn't at the time. There definitely wasn't any real criticism of the ownership at that point in time, because I think people could see that they were putting money in, and it's probably more based on some players not being considered good enough, which was just factual, and like the managers. Maybe the manager still changed over quite quickly, and I think the board, football ownership was pretty impatient, and has been actually throughout. Apart from, you could argue with Gerrard and with Clement, unfortunately, but there was certainly an impatience for Rangers to compete. But I think there was an understanding that the guys that own it really want to be successful as soon as possible. They're throwing as much money as they can at it, and the club really wants to be successful, and there's just going to be a bit of a churn, and therefore there's less, there's less to be angry about. I think having, where we are now, having sort of got back, actually, had two things which are up there with sort of Rangers' greatest achievements on the park have happened in the last few years. Lots of good stuff has happened, and made record sales, things like that off the park as well, and then to still be so crap. I think people are a bit like fed up of that now.
Mm-hmm. Right, I think for this introduction that'll do us. Pretty much nothing else to cover. We've done 20 minutes, so yeah, I think that'll be fine. Euan, on this occasion, thank you very much for joining me. Well, we're going to be back together for episode 1 at least, and then you'll be flitting in and out alongside the regular cast. Is there any kind of funny moment in particular you're really kind of looking forward to?
Well, I mean, the highlights, seeing Ian Black like karate kick by Gary Tom, that always sticks with me from that season. Like, just like we were all Gary Tom that day, because I don't think anyone hated Ian Black more than the Rangers support did. And that was always stuck with you. Fran Sandata getting tricked by a taxi driver. These are the classic moments from that first season. So yeah, there's plenty to come.
Brilliant. Right, so tune in for those when they come, and thank you very much for your continued support of the podcast. We'll talk to you again soon. Goodbye.